Hey Beulah young adults, welcome back to another episode of our Ask Us Anything series. This is part 2 where Stu and Neil sat down to answer some tough questions around faith, unity, race, and intimacy within dating relationships. So without further ado, let's jump right into it.
One last question, Neil. So we're going to jump in. I'm going to let you just share, just pastorally walk through your response to this question here, because I think there's a lot of heart behind it, and it's very genuine of probably someone's feelings and wrestling that they got going on right now. So someone wrote in and said, what do you do when you question your faith? So it's less out of do I believe God is real or not, but it's more of I'm questioning my faith from the place of am I a Christian or not? What's your response to that person?
I think that's a fantastic question. It's a very valid and a very real question. So whoever asked that, I just want to say that to validate them in this moment. Personally speaking, in the beginning when I came to Jesus at about age 23, Stu, I questioned my faith all the time. But now looking back, now that I'm 42, looking back, why did I question or doubt my identity or my faith? Here's a couple of reasons why I did. I doubted it because I failed. I failed in my own eyes to live to a certain standard I knew God was calling me to. And I think that informs a bit of this feeling or this question, because we have a certain ideal way of how we ought to be and how we ought to shape up because we're Christians now.
Right.
What we kind of forget is it's a process. It's both a point and a process. Both a point where I came to believe that God died for my sins, and He was raised from the dead, and He died for my sins. He's the Lord. He's forgiven me. If I really believed that, I wouldn't beat myself up so bad in questioning my own identity to the point where I question what God did for me in making me a Christ follower, because then that puts the onus or the performance on me. And we live in a culture that's extremely performance-based.
Yeah.
And so we feel that we can't do certain things for God until we perform in a perfect way, or we aren't ready for something until we've not or stopped doing this for God. And I would argue that because, you know what? A lot of people doubted in the Bible. If you read through the book of Psalms, which is one of the most popular books, I think it's because it's so raw, it's honest. So real. I'm glad it's recorded there. Tons of people were angry with God, doubted God. The prophets of the Old Testament doubted God, were angry with God. You can hear, honestly, severe depression sometimes in what they would say. And God was gracious to them. He loved them. He comforted them, sometimes to a point where He would tug on them and nudge on them to get moving, because He didn't want them to stay there. But He accepted them for how they felt in their doubts. And in the New Testament, John the Baptist doubted that the Messiah really came, doubted that Jesus really came, doubted his faith, doubted God's love for him, right? Because of what? Because of his circumstance. So sometimes circumstances, whether they're failures of our own or sins of our own or trip-ups, whatever you want to call them, yes, there's consequences, but those can make us feel like, oh my goodness, who am I kidding? I'm not a Christian. A Christian doesn't fail like that. A Christian isn't broken like that. And I would argue, actually, that's why Jesus died for you.
So, I'm the person that asked that question, say, in this conversation here, and I'm wrestling through that, and you want to pick me up, encourage me, affirm that I am a child. How do you do that? Or what's your response to me in that moment as I'm feeling the wrestle or the weight of just going out, but I'm not sure. I fell into this temptation, or I'm having these thoughts, or I just don't know if this is just a made up experience that I hadn't in the past. Like just in some ways care for me in this moment, reaffirm to me more so than what you just did, because that was good, but like just like come alongside me like I'm Zach, like when he's a teenager asking the same question.
I love that, and it's a perfect segue to this answer, because I will talk about Zachary, which pertains to you or the person asking. You know, Zach, sometimes he's pretty hard on himself because he makes a mistake or he does something bad and he gets in trouble, right? And there are times where I can discipline him, but there's times where I need to put my shoulder and come alongside him and give him assurance. Though he fails or passes or does something good or does something bad, never, ever changes his identity as my son, and never changes my love as a father to him. I'll give you another example. You know, he just turned 7, and to tell you the truth, he can't play the violin yet or the piano. He's not getting his medical degree. He doesn't get a 4.0 GPA. Do I still love him?
Yeah.
Of course I do.
Yeah.
You know, he hasn't even shoveled the snow for his dad once, right? Like, get out there.
Yeah.
But here's what I'm trying to say. He hasn't done much for us at his age up till now. And it's never questioned in my mind or his mother's mind that he's our beloved son. It doesn't change his status with us. Why is it that you or we often beat ourselves up and question our identity as a child of God, as a Christ follower, when we do so in life poorly, or we break something, or we mess up something? Yes, there's ramifications. There's discipline involved. There's all those things we don't enjoy. We ought to learn from them, because this is worth doing. This relationship thing with Jesus is worth doing. So it is worth doing right. But, you know, Stu, it's a process. It's a messy process. Yeah. And Jesus, of all people, hung around with rough, messy people.
Yeah.
So he instead of him running away from the mess, he runs to the mess. Yeah. I am that mess.
Yeah.
And he reminds me again and again, it's about what he has done for me. It's about his love for me. It has nothing to do with my performance. Yeah. However, because I love him and his kindness leads me to want to change, an attitude of gratitude, then I want to now honor God and obey his commands, because it pleases the good King.
Yeah, like you in this moment, I didn't ask the question, but you've cared for me. You pastored me in this moment and reminded me that, like, if it was me asking this question, you can take me back to the date, you know, the date we write in our Bible of when I became a Christian, and you can go like, see, it happened. You are like, I was there, or whatever. We can't, because it's only God that knows the heart and can and say, hey, that was the start of transformation there. But what you've done really has brought us back to going, hey, if you're a child, that identity will never change. And that's so important, because we do live in a performance-based culture, but you're showing me that it's identity before activity as a Christian in that way. And you didn't go there, but I just think of the story of the nickname, and he probably would hate this nickname if he's around right now, Doubting Thomas. And here's a guy that hung out with Jesus for 3-ish years, saw all these stuff, was told he is the Messiah, and was even told, I am going to raise myself from the dead. And then he comes in the room, and all the other disciples like, Jesus is alive. And it's like, no way. I'm not going to believe it unless I can put my hands where those nails went through in that way. And what does Jesus do? He meets him exactly in that place. Yeah. So I think if someone's asking that question, I us as pastors would love to be able to sit down and or be on the phone and genuinely have that conversation for whoever put that in there or whoever else is asking that. And we believe that Jesus would meet them in the middle of their doubt, just as he met Thomas in the middle of his doubt.
Absolutely.
Yeah, Neil, like we've covered so many different questions in our conversations, and I appreciate you jumping in with us for all of them. And I look forward to maybe in the not so distant future being able to do this with again. But I appreciate your time, appreciate your wisdom, your experience, your Bible knowledge, but overall your care and your love for those that are listening to these responses to the questions. So thanks for joining me.
Thank you so much for having me. God bless.